Greetings, everybody. It's great to see you. Chris Miller here with the National Coalition for Community Capital. And I get to have a conversation with like my best friend in this space. We're best buddies, and we go back to the very beginning of the National Coalition for Community Capital and before. So we were actually working together before this started. And that, of course, is Angela Barbash, one of the co-founders of NC3, our first board chair. Again, I've said this before and it bears repeating. Big shoes that I'm still trying to fill right now. And Angela has a unique perspective in this space. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We thought, however, we would start by talking a little bit about our national conference we had a couple of weeks ago here in Michigan. Angela and I are both Michigan residents, and we had a great event, 116 attendees from 17 states and Canada. Were in the space, nearly 80 different organizations, all kinds of folks, all there to hear about community capital and pooled investment vehicles. We call them community investment funds. And so, Ange, we haven't had much of a chance to really debrief on this. So tell me, kind of what your impression is, what you've heard, including any maybe follow-on conversations.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. Your words are always so kind and loving, and I appreciate that. And I've always appreciated the work that we've been able to do together over the years in this movement. It was really interesting to see how diverse the crowd was, the group of people that came together, not just in the communities that they represent, but in their perspectives and how intuitive the work really was. So I am taken right back to one of the mobilizing sessions that we got to participate in. Our team, we led investor engagement. And for anyone watching that did not have the opportunity to be at this event, I thought it was really cool how you all pulled together the agenda so that in the afternoon there was this rotating opportunity where people could go to these little mini sessions around the room. And so we got to lead investor engagement, and we focused on helping these would-be fund developers or currently developing funds or fund adjacent people in the community that wanted to be champions of the work in their own backyard. We get to lead them through this exercise to help them identify feelings that might come up as they work to engage investors, and then what the needs are that are behind those feelings so that they knew what actions to take to address those needs and address those feelings, which is something that I think doesn't really get talked enough about in the investor engagement part of this community capital work. And so we weren't sure how this was going to land. This was our first time bringing this perspective and topic to a group of random people from around the country. So we were really testing the waters with it. But what was so striking was how intuitive it was for everyone. They landed on those feelings. They know what those feelings are, whether it's anxiety or excitement, hesitation. They knew what those were, and they could really readily identify the needs behind them. And that made the brainstorming around the actions to take so much richer. So I thought, when I had that experience, and I harkened back to events that we had done in the past, before COVID, and then in the very early days of the community capital movement when the Jobs Act had just been passed in the early 10s. That intuition was not there. And so that for me was a perfect example of the arc of development that has happened and the maturation that has happened in the movement. While we still might consider it to be a nascent movement and a lot of work to be done ahead of us, I can definitely see that the ball has moved further down the field. So that was pretty exciting.
That is super cool. I think one of the things in this space that has been really important for us is understanding that evolution exactly as you've just described it. Because in reality, we're doing something that the vast majority of our communities and the people that we work with have never done before, and their parents didn't do it, and their grandparents didn't do it, and
Mhm.
and so So that's cool. So I suspect that's gratifying to see from your seat working with investors because largely when we come into a community or we have conversations, we don't have a lot of time and energy that we focus on the investor side. It's mostly we're talking about the structures and the people that are coming to us initially, they're searching for solutions. So we have a really fantastic solution for them. But we do definitely talk about investors in the piece and preparing the community and messaging and all of that stuff. But we don't get, to the level that you clearly got in the conversation there. In what ways did that sort of that intuitive piece resonate with what we did by introducing the idea of these community investment funds? What did you see there that was particularly striking?
Well, I I think that it was a matchup, where the participants, and we got to interact with maybe altogether probably 60 of the 116 that ended up attending our session. And so for the folks that we got to interact with in that session, um, it was like had already been, energized by either before they arrived at the event, they had already been doing this work through the accelerator program to start up a community investment fund, or they had become energized in the room. And so for them to be able to understand how they can meet the needs of the investors in their community and to make that connection, it was like Lego blocks for them, where they could see like, oh, this is how it fits together. It's not just the solution that we bring to market, but it's the meeting the investors where they are piece, and helping them see themselves in the solution. So that was pretty neat. And I think even for people that didn't necessarily understand all the logistics of the fund structure and all the kind of technical side, they understood they had already understood the why, but now they understood a little bit more about the qualitative how. So it wasn't just the technical kind of quantitative how of this is how you structure the fund. This is how the finances work in the fund, how the cash flow operates. But now it was the qualitative. This is how you talk to investors about it. This is how you really bring them into the fold and help them see themselves in the work. So
Okay. So that's super cool. So taking, both what you do at Revalue, working with investors, and I know you're working with investors across the country right now,
yeah.
and those investors are all mission and values investors and are looking to do impact, et cetera. So how do we take what you heard and experienced and your team did at the conference a couple of weeks ago, and apply that to the work that we're doing, building those funds? And if you'd also reflect a little bit about your work with investors, and you launched this organization 12 years ago.
Yeah, 12 years ago. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and are now, managing a lot of money from a lot of people across the country, and just kind of talk about that a little bit. But
Yeah.
let's start off with, the practicality of, okay, we're someone who's watching this is interested in a fund. What should they be thinking about on the investor side?
Yeah. So to kind of level set with folks that are watching this, so we're a registered investment advisor, which means that we're fiduciaries, we're fee only, we don't take commissions, we don't start funds, which is a common question. We don't manage funds, we don't manage like community investment funds for communities. We strictly sit on the investor side of the equation. So we're doing the due diligence on all these funds that are getting launched, or we will be doing the due diligence once they get launched around the country. And then we do due diligence on the other funds that have already existed. And we're helping the investors figure out what really is an appropriate fit for their portfolio and their specific needs. And that has been a real missing piece in the marketplace, because we can have great solutions of funds or direct investment opportunities in communities. And we can have investors who are excited and energized to participate in this kind of work. But those investors will always stop themselves at the door for some people it'll be for a half a second they'll stop themselves, before they take the move to invest. And for other people, it will be years that they will stop themselves. And the reason why they stop themselves is because we all understand that we have to make decisions that are prudent for our specific situation. Now, as I said, some investors will stop themselves for just a half a second, and they'll do a quick mental calculation of, does this make sense for me? And those are the more risk tolerant investors, or maybe risk unaware investors, that they're not really comprehending their own situation. So they're quick to take action. And then you've got these very risk adverse investors who really want to take action, but because they don't feel like they've got a good handle on their situation, or they do and they know it doesn't make sense for them right now, they might take years to take action. And then everyone is in between these two extremes. And so what has been really missing, or what was missing in the marketplace before we started Revalue, and even after we started Revalue, frankly, it took us years to fine tune how we talk to investors and how we do this work. What was really missing was the care to help people understand their own situation well enough to feel confident about the decisions they were making on community investments, not just Wall Street investments. And so that's really been a cornerstone of the work that we do, is helping people understand their own situation today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. What are their liquidity needs? Meaning, how much cash do they really need to have on hand? How quickly do they need to access these funds versus not? These are the challenges that investors have, is that they're trying to make these decisions in the context of their own lives. And it's going to take a lot more than just Revalue to be on the other side of that table with investors, because we can't serve all investors as much as we would love to, because we are passionately in love with this work. We would serve all the investors if we could, but it's just not realistic. So the best that we can do is serve the ones that we are privileged to serve, which is about 230 right now. We manage about $100 million in assets in Wall Street that are being divested. Probably about a quarter of that capital is destined for divestment into Main Street, or for redistribution, again, to Main Street, basically, but through charitable means. So we can serve as many as we can, for how quickly we grow. But the other thing that we realized we could do is influence other investment advisors at other firms, help bring people from the social work, social sciences sectors into finance. So social workers and therapists and these kinds of folks, or community organizers, bringing them into finance, because they tend to get the conversation a little bit easier, and they understand really what the struggle in the streets is, so to speak. And to influence our peers, to get them to pay attention, not just to this form of investing, but to really highlight it and elevate it and advance the movement with their own clients, and to bring others into the fold. So we think that's an important part of the work. It's not just a one-to-one relationship of us to investors.
Terrific. Always careful and thoughtful and insightful. So you're on an elevator, somebody's talking about a community investment fund they want to put together. What are you going to tell them? What nugget will you convey to them about thinking about the potential investors in that fund?
I am so glad that you are thinking about a community investment fund. And a lot of people don't know that there are already solutions, guides, handbooks, people that can walk you through the process. If you give me your card, I would be happy to pass on some resources to you. And that's no strings attached. You don't have to do business with us to know what's out there. We're just happy to be a peer in the environment and bring you into the movement.
Wow, that's perfect. What a great end. So, Ange, it's an honor to be your friend and colleague in this important work. And for everybody listening, thanks so much for being with us today. And you can get a hold of either of us in this space. Go to nc3now.org and let's change the world together. So thank you very much.